So, girls of Daraja, as you know, you are people want to meet you. Let me put it that way. People fly to Kenya, drive up to Nanyuki from the Bay Area. They come from New York. Well, we've got somebody calling in from north of the border, calling in from Calgary, Canada. Marty Park has joined us on Daraja Means Bridge to tell us a little bit about himself, but also to share some extremely valuable information, especially for you alumni that are launching out into the world, or you're trying to make it on your own right now, or you're in college and you're working on your side hustle. This dude knows all about the things that can help you. So I'm not going to say much more about you, Marty. I'm going to let you do it for yourself. Can you say hello to the world, to the Daraja girls, and to the Daraja alumni?
Ladies, nice to be here. Thank you, Jason. So nice to chat with you already and then to dive into this. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's exciting for me. So I'll give you a little bit about my background because I think, I always say I'm an entrepreneur, which is an easy thing that people are like, oh yeah, okay, you've run a business. But I've actually run 13 companies in 7 different industries over the last 25 years. And I was the classic good student, did what mom and dad said, got good grades in high school, was going to university, didn't enjoy university a whole lot, in part because I just sort of was, I got scholarships to university and college and was, big school, right? There's 30,000 students and I was just kind of a number, and I was in classes where there was 300 or 400 kids. And I wasn't necessarily enjoying that whole experience. But I was going to business because my dad said, if you're in business, you'll be able to get a good job. And really that was I listened to what he said. And then he said, you're going to graduate, you'll join a big company like Procter and Gamble or some global international company, spend your career, work your way up the ladder, maybe get to be an executive vice president and have a great pension. I never really thought twice about it. And then I get to college and I get involved in the Entrepreneurs Club, which the clubs at the university had an extra lounge that was private, like a private lounge. And mostly I was interested in getting into the private lounge. And I was like, I got to join a club. Do I join the finance club? And there was the Entrepreneurs Club. And I was like, that sounds interesting. Oh, cool. And it was from hanging around with these guys at college that were like, hey, what kind of company would you start? And it really, the whole idea of starting a company suddenly was like, this seems really interesting. And so going into my 4th year of the business program, I told my parents, hey, I'm dropping out of college. I'm dropping out of university and I'm going to start a software company. And they, of course, being parents, were like, what? Where did we go wrong? You were such a good kid. And I said, Mom, Dad, don't worry. By the time everybody graduates, I'll be retired. Because, how tough could it be to build the next Microsoft or Google?
Right.
And I will tell you, I started that company with what I love to call blissful ignorance. You have no idea what the ride of entrepreneurship is going to be like until you get on it. And then it's sort of like going to Magic Mountain or one of those giant theme parks. You get on a roller coaster in the dark. You don't really know how big it is. You think, oh, this won't be so bad. And then it starts to sort of click up and you're going all the way up, and then it starts to rush down. And it doesn't take long before you're like, I just want to get off this ride. But being young, I think it's one of the best times in the world in your life to start a business or to start a side hustle. And I had a guy at a conference. We were actually running an entrepreneurs conference just before I left to start a company. And he said, listen, he goes, most people get into this where they say, well, I'm going to start a business later, but I'll get a job. And then they meet their spouse, and then they have a couple kids, and then they're trying to buy a house or a car. And he said, before you know it, you're 40 something. And now you're thinking of starting a business. So he said, take the risk in your 20s when you have the energy. And he really, really encouraged that. And that message just stuck with me. And it's true. So we started a software company that did interactive voice response software, which is the same as voicemail technology, or push 1 for this choice, push 2 for that choice. And after 6 months, I hadn't paid myself, was living off maxed credit cards. The brokest day I had was getting to the gas station and knowing that I had to get to the office to collect some money from one of our customers so I could gas up my car. And I could actually write myself a check to be able to, but I got to the gas station and I had 83 cents in my ashtray. So I collected 83 cents. And you can imagine you go to a gas pump and I squeeze the gas And that was about it. And I put it back, and I got up, and normally people would look down their nose, or, at the gas station attendant, like, oh, he's the guy working at the gas station. And this guy looked at me and he said 83 cents. And I put the change down, and then he counted it all out, 25, 50, 60. And I was like, God, this is most embarrassing moment of my entrepreneur experience.
The line behind you is
right. Yeah. And people, and I was like, oh my God. And, but it also though, and then I got to the office, and I was sort of like, I was rolling down the hills. Like, I hope this is enough gas to get there. But I got to the office, and boy, I got to tell you, I got on the phone and started phoning customers who owed us money or to collect a check. And we collected like $2,200 that day. And so I wrote a check for myself for 500, and Greg, my business partner, took 500. And I don't even know if Greg knows this story. But yeah, I took $500 and put it in the bank, and I had money again. And okay, that business at a really young age taught me the sales skills and how to manage people, because a lot of my employees were way older than me. And by the time I was on Greg and I launched an audio production company that was sort of a spin-off of this. And so then I got involved in voice talent and radio production and some of this. Ironically, 19 years later, I just recorded my audiobook in the exact same studio that I helped put the foam padding up that dampens the sound. And I was talking to the producer, and I said, hey, this piece of carpet that's on here, this foam carpet that's on here, I'm pretty sure I used the staple gun and put this on this pedestal like 19 years ago.
Classic.
Yeah. So it's very full circle. But I never really thought of myself as an entrepreneur until I was probably on my third business. I'd sold those businesses, my portion of it, back to Greg. And I got into the bar and restaurant business because a friend of mine really wanted to get in the bar and restaurant business. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that as my first foray into business. I don't think the restaurants and bars are not exactly the best place to make money, or it tends to be, it's just a really tough place to learn. But about that time, I started to think, by then I was like 27, and I was like, wait a second, I think I might be an entrepreneur. But I really loved the energy, the hours I had to put into things, the time and effort. And while it was really, really challenging, it really set me up for so much learning that I was at a place of understanding finances, of understanding, how to sell, which then applies to everything you do, whether you've got a corporate job and you're always trying to sell people on ideas. And I learned a little bit about marketing, and there was just so many aspects of how to communicate, a little bit of leadership, right? Like, okay, now suddenly I've got a bunch of staff and I don't even know how to run a meeting. I got to go learn about these things. So I found that the growth and learning opportunity of becoming an entrepreneur at an early age was awesome for me. And I just soaked it up. And then I got into what I really think has been my career. So I've had all these different companies, but after I'd been in software, I'd opened up this little bar restaurant. I sold my software company, went to work for somebody else. So I had one of those day jobs where I was flying all over North America, and it sounded glamorous. Like, oh, I'm in New York and Boston on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I'm going to fly to Denver. And then, next week I'm in the Bay Area and I'm in LA for a day. But really, you're just in the back of cabs, airplanes, and hotels, right? And these sort of nondescript boardrooms. But I really found that while it was a great payday, being in the software business was just sort of software. It had no heart in it for me. And what would happen is we'd sell $1 million of software to Texas utilities, or a big corporation, a Fortune 500 company. And they'd be like, I'd say, how's it going? What's happening? And they said, oh, well, yeah, we haven't installed it yet. Maybe we'll install it next year. I'd be like, what? I'd say, well, yeah, but just keep sending us updates of the software. We'll get around to it. And I think, you just spent $1 million in this. But for big companies, $1 million is not much money. And then I would come home on the weekends to this little bar restaurant I opened with my friend Soren. And I should mention, I've had lots of business partners who were friends of mine first. And we came home. But on the weekends, even though there was a band and people were dancing and they'd eat nachos or whatever, that at least there was great instant feedback. I knew that although maybe I wasn't changing anybody's life, I was giving them a good experience, that there was this like, we had the best time and I got so drunk and best date place, or, best first date ever. And it was just a really, really great, fun, enjoyable business. And I thought, I've got to find something in my day job and sort of my career that is going to impact people that way. And so I had somebody introduce me to the idea of coaching back now 18 years ago, where I was like, what is coaching? You mean like sports coaching? And they said, no, business coaching. I was like, I didn't know what that is, because I understand business and I understand coaching as a sports thing, but I don't know how those two mesh. But it really was, they said, here's your chance to work with business owners, give them ideas, guidance, accountability to do things, share, your business knowledge, and it's going to help them run a better business, make more money for themselves and their family, live a better balanced lifestyle, have more time off. And that, having been an entrepreneur, just resonated with me, where I was like, man, if I could help people like that, that would be awesome. And I have to tell you, I have a stack of, I should have brought the visual with me.
You need some prop.
I have a prop. I have a stack of cards, thank you cards that I've gotten in this career that is so big, but it was turned out to be a main business that has been really super rewarding, because it's having a big impact on people. And so now, as I've chosen other companies and of course gone down the wrong path, like, I set up a marketing agency. I was running it, and then I took it over and privatized it with one of my other friends. But I was like, not passionate about marketing. I just think intellectually, I know it's a really key part of business, but I don't care what color your logo is. And I don't care what your slogan is, but I was in the weeds of that business. And I realized, okay, intellectually, I know the importance of this product in the market, but I'm not that jazzed about it. And I found that business to be a real struggle, because I couldn't sit with people and sell it or present it with that same level of heartfeltness that I have had with coaching, or even in the restaurant bar business. I really loved being in that business, or audio production. I had a lot of fun with that. So that's sort of been my journey of, oftentimes I've been coaching, and then unlike the sort of distinction I've had is, unlike a lot of people in coaching who just do that, I simultaneously am saying, look, I'm also running 2 restaurants. I've got the marketing agency going, and I'm busy being an entrepreneur while I'm teaching other people how to be a better entrepreneur. And it's only been in the last 5 years, because I have small boys, that I really had divested of everything else to just focus on Evolve, my coaching and training company. And
Interesting.
yeah.
So that doesn't really,
sort of
you don't have to do that 9 to 5 grind. I guess with coaching, you can adjust it more to your life. Right.
It's true. I mean, I run it like I've been through the phase of, this is a great lifestyle job. I'm golfing in the afternoons. I'm drinking beer with my friends. And then at some point I realized that the business never stays flat. It's either growing or dying. And so just by trying to keep it as a lifestyle business, it was actually slowly dying. And one day I was like, geez, I don't know if I can pay all the bills with this clients. So I have now taken the approach of like, I run this like a business, where it is my job. But you're right. On today, I will leave the office early and go have an extra couple hours with my boys. They're 7 and 6 as of this weekend, and then Friday afternoons I leave. Typically Friday afternoons I do beer meetings, and so we meet, and I will be drinking beer. You don't have to, but that's the rule. And so there's certainly way more lifestyle to it. But I'm trying to structure things now around what's most important with my family, and then how do I work the business around it? Because if COVID's taught us anything, it's like, I can have clients anywhere in the world. I can meet with people virtually. I don't have to travel. Like, the efficiency of things you can do has just increased so much that it really allows, so many people that are like, I don't need to go into the office. I'm way more productive and comfortable working from home. And then there's the freedom of that, right? And
there is the freedom.
Yeah. And I think it's for a lot of people who are like, you're where in the world? I think now some of those borders are broken down, because the same way my business coach is a guy in Brisbane, Australia, and I've got clients in the UK and in the US and in Canada, it's really opened up the idea like, oh yeah, there's an international marketplace that I can tap into. if I just really kind of just wade out into it, it's there. And that's been
Right.
an exciting development at this point in my business and my work.
Wow. So super cool, first off. And I've got probably 10 different things that I want to ask you about. But I will say this, I will not be surprised. I head back to Kenya in June, and I'm dying to get back there. And I am sure that we're going to hear about, hey, Mr. D, we need to start an entrepreneur club. We need an entrepreneur club, because we've got some pretty cool clubs, but that sounds like a neat club. There's some certain mystique around the word entrepreneur. I think
because it's French.
is that, yeah, I think that must be what it is. It's French, and it's sort of like, what exactly is it?
Is it? Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, the negative side is the guy that hands out business cards that says, I'm an entrepreneur, right? As he's trying to meet women.
And there's people that use it like it's exactly like the Instagram entrepreneur, where it's like, here's my jet, here's my Ferrari. And you're like, that's the real entrepreneurs and business owners I know are people that are concerned about community, about like, how do we give back? They may have a nice car in the garage, but most of the time they just drive their truck to the office, or, that they're really not very flashy.
Well, but what's really cool that I heard you talking about is it's a really well-rounded person. Like a person that's a good entrepreneur knows something about a lot of different stuff. And so that was going to be my question for these girls, because I will put my 2 cents in. Girls, I really hope you don't drop out of university at here. But no, I know you weren't saying that. I'm just telling them.
Yeah.
Right. Really what's right, go.
Listen to Jason.
But what I would say is this, for somebody that's interested in taking that route, is it learning about business, learning about finance, learning about marketing, or you kind of said learn about what you like?
So inevitably, here's a good example, like the person who becomes a dentist. They learn a lot about dentistry, but they don't really learn about how to run a dental business.
Mm-hmm.
Or the mechanic who becomes a great car mechanic, but then you say, well, now you've got your own shop and I don't know anything about running a shop.
Right.
So I think that finding the balance of something you're really interested in, but also entrepreneurship forces you to become people that say, I'm not really good with money. Well, you better get good with it. You better overcome that fear of it. And because you're going to have to now manage it, and you hire a few people, you've got payroll, right? And I think that good entrepreneurs, if you say like, I want to be successful at running whatever kind of company it is, it forces you to say, well, I'm afraid of selling stuff. Okay. So that's okay. And it's a skill set. It is like anything else where you practice it. It's like learning another language. You practice it and all of a sudden you find, hey, I'm conversing a little bit better. And I just loved the idea that what I really love is every business you see, right? You walk down the main street, there's stores, restaurants, there's a tech company. You go to an industrial area. Every one of those businesses always has the component of, we're trying to sell something, market something, finance it, administer it, deliver it. We need the people. Like it's a universal sort of language of business. And I always found that incredibly interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
And
the other thing I got to mention is I do a lot of, at the university here, I do a lot of mentorship, and I'm a judge oftentimes for the entrepreneur classes at the university. And there are so many good ideas. There are so many times where me and other judges, and I lean over to somebody, I'm like, I'm totally going to steal that idea. They're like, isn't that great? If those kids don't do that idea, we should totally start a company and do that. They have so many. Now, there's some crazy ideas too, but there's the idea that you have to be a certain age to come up with a great business idea. I just wanted to make sure. I think that's a fallacy.
A fallacy.
There's no age requirement to be good in business or to be good to come up with a clever idea.
You talking right now just again made me think of 2 more things. One, we are going to talk after this because I really want to know how would we set up this entrepreneur club, and if you do judge these things, what is it? What goes into judging that? Because this is a skill set that can be developed, and I really want our girls to think about that. And I just thought of 2 of our girls last year. There was a national science competition, and they had to come up with an invention that was going to help Kenyans. And what these girls wanted to do was come up with water pumps are really expensive, like the diesel
Right.
water pump that you go down to the river and you can pump water up for either your farm or for drinking water. And they came from an area where there was a lot of hippos and crocs and people could get hurt.
I was going to say,
So,
that's not a good combination with water.
right. And so what these girls did was that were also kind of, there was steep ledges down to the water. So
Right.
they made a hand pump water pump, and they wanted to try to make it so that the everyman could build this thing. So they used scrap wood from one of our building sites. They used surgical gloves to make the seals. They used old hoses, and they built this incredible water pump that could pump water up 100 feet. They were just using their noggin. They saw a niche, they saw a need, and they finished second in the nation. This little girls' school out in the countryside.
Right.
And they're going to be visiting. They were supposed to be in Paris last summer, except the COVID kind of messed that up. But these girls have that. And so my next point is this. All right, let's say you're either a Daraja student, you're home on break, because some of them start their own businesses that way. Some of them we teach about, we have a transition program when they finish the 12th grade before they go to college and university that teaches them things. They learn to write a business plan during that. And how would they go about doing that? They don't have a lot of capital. What do they need to do to launch, to get a business moving?
So, you talk about the invention. Sometimes there's I was just listening to a great podcast, and the guy was talking about people forget about the 999 times it didn't work, and then the one time it worked, right? But the theme there is persistence. And I think that persistence to me becomes the most important thing. Persistence in them trying to figure out, well, what's the well solution going to be? And we've got to use materials here, and just the ongoing little issues, solving it, little issues, solve it, and then finally coming up with their prototype. In starting a business, I think you can be able to say, hey, we can build a better widget than somebody else, or there's an immediate problem and we figured out how we could solve the problem. And it's really oftentimes just the persistence of trying that. But the other thing is that sometimes we always think we've got to come up with a brand new business. And I got to tell you, my favorite is, I like to use the idea of like a printing company or a print shop, right? It's the same like paper, ink, print, like there's nothing new and innovative about it. And in a city like the one I'm in, there's 60 different printers, or maybe it's more like probably 160 printers. They're all doing the same thing. And yet you could come into that marketplace and do a better job because the level of service is set really low. The other guy is always reprinting stuff because doesn't have the attention to quality and detail. Like what I'm getting at is that you could go into any business that you know of now where you go, these guys do a terrible job. We could outcompete them, right? So I think that there's a place to be able to, there's a great example out of Las Vegas where a guy wanted to start becoming a supplier for kitchens in Las Vegas. And of course the kitchen said, well, listen, we already got some of the big corporate conglomerate guys who supply us all of our food. And he started asking if there was one thing that you can't get from them, or if there's one unique exotic thing, what would it be? And it came up, somebody had mentioned a certain type of mushrooms, and he went out resourcefully and did phone calls, checked on the internet, found a supplier out of Europe who made these mushrooms and brought them in and brought them to the guy at the Vegas restaurant. And said, hey, I've got these mushrooms. Well, now all of a sudden the guy said, well, hey, could you also get me these? And then he had another chef, same thing, found a product. But he built what I'd call a sort of an exotic ingredients business specifically for all the kitchens and restaurants in Las Vegas. And it has grown to be a massive. And then once he got all those and he built the trust with all the exotic products, he started to move into more and more of the mainstream, right? Like started supplying protein like beef and things where he's like, I can get a better cut than you're getting from this big. But I always think that's a great example of like, it could start with something really, really small. I mean, he found an exotic type of mushroom that one chef said he needed, but then was persistent and diligent, found it, made the transaction, and was like, do you need to buy this on a regular basis? Right. Yeah. Like, could you bring it to me every 2 weeks? Sure. No problem. It wasn't really a business yet, but he saw that with that transaction, and he just was persistent. Like, well, I can't live on an order of mushrooms every 2 weeks, but what else do I do next?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even in my business today, we were just talking about, we just launched a social media program. We asked our clients, like, outside of our coaching programs, what else do you need? Like, where are you struggling in your business? What's a pain in the butt? Like, what's really, and they're like, social media, like it's a necessary evil, but we don't like doing it. We don't have time for the content. We said, well, if we had a service and we did that, would you pay for it? Oh, yeah. And I mean, we got 3 or 4 clients on, and now there's like 10 companies. We just launched it 8 weeks ago. But by the end of the year, that'll be one of those things where it's like, it's a substantial business on its own. And it's just by asking the question
Right.
of what people need and being observant. And I think sometimes that is way better than thinking, how do I become the next Google?
Right.
Odds are we're not going to create the next Google, but you could create the next fantastic supply company or well company, or, I mean, there's like everything you look around. I sometimes like walking through a department store or a big, like a Costco or a big shop, and you just see the diversity of all the products.
Sure.
But I also I keep a journal on my phone now. I used to write it, of problems I run into. Like when I'm sitting and thinking, this is poorly done. This is a problem. I started writing those things because sometimes they're like, what kind of business could you create out of that? And I think doing that with having a couple of friends, or like you said, having a club, that was really having this club with guys like Greg and David and guys who have become my business partners.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know, but we were just like, you know how we picked our telephony business? Greg was reading a magazine, a tech magazine, and it said, interactive voice response technology is the wave of the future. And he was like, we should get into this. We had no idea.
No way.
We ordered a board for the computer out of a company, a supplier who had an advertisement in the magazine from New Jersey. The board was like, I'm going to say 25 grand. And I didn't remember how we came up with that initial money. But then we got a developer. We put an ad out for a developer. We came across this guy, Al, who was a genius, just a fantastic developer. And Al was able to go, okay, give me the technology and the hardware. And he tinkered and played. And all of a sudden we came in one morning, he's like, watch this. You push a button, and you were like, and it worked. And then we were like, and then we were off and running. We thought, well, we're going to do voicemail. And then we realized the big guys were doing voicemail, and we couldn't compete with Nortels and these huge corporations. But then we had to pivot and be like, where could we specialize this technology that we don't have to compete with just the generic voicemail? And then we found out there's all sorts of information delivery systems and other, like originally what used to be at the front of the yellow pages,
Right.
or a phone book, where it would be like dial a law. You want to know about different types of law, you could punch in codes. You want to learn about medical stuff, you can punch in codes. So it's sort of outdated today, but it was adaptive, and just, we were persistent. And I think that for anybody thinking about running a business or a side hustle, the number one thing is that persistence, and like, how can I just keep making this better? What am I getting for feedback? And being adaptive. It is, if you just kept doing that, that's 95% of entrepreneurship.
Well, they know persistence. These young ladies know persistence, because just to make it to Daraja, to make it to their 8th grade interview, to sit down to interview for a scholarship, they've had to really, really take it on the chin many times. A lot of our girls have to walk. You always hear about the dad saying, I had to walk, 2 miles to school.
Right.
Our girls walk 2 miles to school. The first year that we opened, one of the girls, Tina, wasn't there about 5 hours after the girls were supposed to show up. There were elephants where she normally catches a ride, and so you wait. So
right.
Our girls are persistent, and right. They know how to take risks. But they get to Daraja, and frankly, it's a scholarship, right? It's a free scholarship because they couldn't afford it. So, to any of those listeners that are out there listening, if they look down in our show notes, there's a girl named Martha, who, through monthly giving, we're trying to raise her scholarship, because by no fault of her own, the person that was paying her scholarship cannot anymore. Right. And so, people can give $20, $30, $50 a month. You are the master negotiator. What would you say to a listener why should they make that choice? Negotiate with them and tell them why their life will be better if they help a girl like Martha out.
You mean, yeah, in terms of why they should contribute?
Yeah.
I mean, God, that's such a no-brainer. I mean, so here's what this is what comes to mind instantly. So I'll just share is sort of, people don't recognize that and I think of this as entrepreneurship, but I think this is the same. So people talk about, well, you're running a business. And I go, no, you're creating an ecosystem, right? You are now, there's now there's your customers, which could be hundreds, could be thousands, could be 10, but there's now that. Then you've got your suppliers, then you've got your staff. And before you know it, your business is touching tens, hundreds, potentially thousands of people. Like, it has a big footprint. And I think that whether it's entrepreneurship or somebody pursuing medicine, or it doesn't matter what it is, when they have the opportunity to complete school, go on to university, the footprint they can create, when you think about all their coworkers, the organization they work with, like their family, the ripple effect. I was just think that it's not about supporting a girl. It is about supporting an ecosystem that she's going to support in her career and her life. And when you think about all those people it touches, to me, that's why I say it's a no-brainer.
Marty, I have never used the term ecosystem, and I wrote it down. That's genius. In 12 years, I've never heard that before. And it's so true, because, you know, what fascinates me about these girls, and they do it time after time, they get into college or university on a scholarship, and then they squirrel away enough of their financial aid to put their little brothers or sisters through school. And so they're already creating that ecosystem that's larger. I love that. And that is perfect. So guys, if you want to help create a new ecosystem for yourself, take Marty's advice and follow that path. I would ask Marty Park this before we jet. And this, you know, we've got probably some 14-year-old ninth graders that are going to be listening to this. If you right now could talk to yourself at 14, what advice would you give yourself?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think what would I say? Ooh, at 14, I think I'd say to myself, hey, you are full of ideas and energy, and you have all the capacities to do whatever you want. I would say, listen, now that's going to require some hard work and some diligence and some persistence, but if you set your mind to it, you can do it. And I think at 14, I didn't necessarily know what that path was going to be, but I'm a big believer that as my boys get to be that age, or as I'm talking to any of the girls that at the school, that I would really advocate that there's nothing you can't do if you started on that path. That if you are diligent about improving yourself, your knowledge, and you're willing to go places, like the things that scare you, if you're willing to take those on. And in business, I've always said, it's for most people, it's things like sales. It's amazing to me that dealing with so many business people, most people are petrified of selling. Mm-hmm. And yet it's a kind of a requirement for a lot of business stuff, right? But people don't want to get past their fear. So I think if talking to my 14-year-old self, it's, tackle those fears, take small steps every day. And you won't necessarily know what the path is, but it's going to be fun and adventurous if you follow your heart first and your head second.
That's really good, because often we let fear hold us back, right? When all we got to do is take a deep breath and know that we're going to be okay, whether it works out right or not. I love that. I'll tell you, I have really enjoyed talking to you, and I am not speaking hyperbole when I say that you will have affected some people's lives just with this short conversation that we had. And I honestly hope that we can stay in contact, because I've got a lot of things I want to talk to you about.
I would love that, Jason. I would absolutely. And so thank you, because I love the conversation. I haven't asked myself, what would I say to my 14-year-old self? That's got me thinking. Be like, but I have to tell you, I'm so impressed. Here's what I think as a guy who lives in Canada, but as part of North America, is that people here don't appreciate how good they've got it, right? All the resources that are available to them. And so for all the girls where, as you said, there's a real struggle for them to get to school, like the basics of, the elephants were there and I had just had to wait. Well, that was a smart decision. But if you can, with all the things that you overcome, the adversities and the things you deal with every single day, tackling entrepreneurship or the career you want and pursuing some of your dreams is really easy. Right. And it frustrates me when I see people in North America who have everything in front of them and are like, oh yeah, I just can't do it. And mostly it's driven by, in my mind, a lot of laziness. Now I know they feel the same fears and concerns as everybody in the world, but man, I just think that your girls have probably more guts and capability than lots of people. And so while everybody might look to be like, well, in North America or other parts of the world, they've got more opportunity, that really it's the same. You make the opportunity, and everybody the world is really can be everybody's oyster if they just pursue it and dig in a little bit.
And remember, girls, you are powerful beyond measure. You have exactly what it takes.
Yes.
And let me ask you this too, because this is often a conversation we have. Sorry, I could talk to you all afternoon. Yeah. Sometimes growing up in material poverty, okay, and I say material, not poverty, because our girls have a wealth when it comes to their insides. Sometimes there's shame that can go along with that, and you can get teased in school, and you can get teased on the global stage. The developing nations are often not seen on the same level.
Totally.
But as a man who has, I think you said you'd started 13 companies.
Right.
13 companies. If you have two people sitting down with the exact same amount of schooling, okay, that are the same age, but one of them is coming from an upper middle class upbringing, and one of them has had to really fight and climb. To me, it's a no-brainer, but they often think that's a handicap that they've had to overcome these things. I'm curious what your take on that is.
I think the first thing in an interview you read is the person, right? Really what you're looking to find out is, what are they about? Like, how likable are they, their personality? But I also am looking for all the traits that are going to make them great for my company, or, great to start a business. And it comes back to me like determination, the way somebody speaks, right? The clarity of their language and just their ability to articulate. You get so impressed with somebody based on who they are. When you come away from and I've done hundreds and hundreds of interviews, and to the point where now, if it's going well, I'd be like, yeah, Jason, I don't think this is going to work out. And you'd be like, I've only been here 2 minutes. I can tell you this ain't working, right? I would cut it off quick.
Interesting.
And my business partner, last time I did that, she was like, well, that was kind of rude. I go, you know what? Life is too short. They are not right for this job. I was polite about it. I just cut it off. But I got to tell you, sometimes you meet people and it doesn't matter what they're wearing, what kind of car they showed up in, or if they walked. It really is about who they are. There's that essence of person that comes through. And I think working on you as an individual, not the material stuff around you, is inevitably the things that when I've sat in an interview and somebody has left and I've looked around at the other people in the interview and somebody says, whoa, like that was incredible. She's a powerhouse. Holy cow. That it's not about, did you see the shoes she was wearing? Oh, look at the handbag she had, or, oh, she went to that school. It's very much about who people are. And so, it's for me, the story of, hey, here's a little bit about my background isn't one of shame. It's like, if somebody says, here's where I've come from, I think most sensible people recognize like, that's just a real attribute, that if they're able to do that and overcome those things, imagine what they can do working for us, or imagine what they can do in joining our organization. So I know that would be sort of again, what I call the Instagram culture of like, look at what I've got, look at all my stuff.
Right.
But when you really get with serious people and organizations, and whether that be, trying to get into a university or into a company, or you want to go talk to a banker and start your business, people are going to connect with the powerful you on the inside. And that is what's going to create success for you.
I agree. So just keep building them values, girls, and keep being proud of yourself. You don't got to shut your door on your past. You just, that's your superpower. Well, Marty, thank you for being on Daraja Means Bridge. I appreciate it. And from the lower states, I want to say thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's so great to chat with you.
All right, bud. You have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.